Welcome to our presentation on leadership, where we will be covering 4 different theories of leadership, each model's primary characteristics, how to transition from follower to leader within these models, and some real-life examples. Great Man is covered by Sindra, Transactional Leadership by Naomi, Transformational by Jennifer, and Organic by Vanetta. At the end of the presentation, we will each provide real-life examples that we've had with our particular leadership style. So let's get started.
The classic or great man theory of leadership is considered the original theory of our current civilization. This theory claims that great leaders are born, not made. This theory became popular after a book written by Thomas Carlyle in 1840 about heroes. The great man theory has 2 main assumptions: that leaders are born with certain leadership traits, and 2, these leaders will rise when the need for them is great. This theory implies that those in power deserve to lead because of the traits they've been endowed with, and implied a strong link between leadership and power. During the time when this theory was in full bloom, the world saw great men in powerful leadership positions like George Washington, Napoleon, Abraham Lincoln, Stonewall Jackson, Stalin, and Mussolini. This theory is basically spawned from the never-ending nature versus nurture debate, with this one falling quite heavily on nature. During the 19th and 20th centuries, Christian religion likely influenced and bolstered the great man theory because of its male-focused, predestinated leader perspective. People also lived much closer to nature, and it's likely they saw male dominance and the natural rise of male leaders in other mammal species. Here's a recording from a sermon in 1956 that demonstrates the born leader perspective from a both religious and nature perspective.
And up there, the ducks come out of the south here from Louisiana and Texas, and they go up in the north to make their nest in the slimes of the north up there on the pond. There is a bunch of slime, and the old mother duck goes in there and lays her eggs, and the little ones are hatched out. When fall of the year comes along September, those little ducks are pretty good size fowls, and they're able to fly. And over the snow-topped mountains, there'll come a snow one night, and the next day the cold breeze will come down across that mountain, and the first cold breeze hits that lake. A little drake that was born on that lake, he's never been nowhere but right there. He'll run right out in the middle of that lake, throw that little honker of his up in the air and honk 4 or 5 times, and every duck on the lake will come to him. They know he's a born leader. Though he's never been off of that pond, he's born there that spring. And he'll rise from that pond and go just as straight to Louisiana as he can go. Why? Everyone will follow him. It's instinct.
The characteristics of a great man leader are not well documented. But this would be expected, because if a person, specifically a male, is just born with magical qualities of being a leader, then how this happened is of really no great significance, right? A sort of leadership alchemy shrouded in mystery and magic and destiny or divine fate. This type of leadership is situational and seems to be a natural product of external threats. Think wars with neighboring tribes or when under extreme persecution. And because power and leadership are often linked together in this theory, there's often an authoritarian, what I say goes kind of mentality. However, within this theory, there's still room for other natural-born leaders like Shakespeare, Martin Luther, Rousseau, and Muhammad. So really, the only common thread among those that were identified as great men in this era were 1, they were well-known heroes that caused positive change in their environment, and 2, they were men. No doubt you've already thought of some of the shortcomings of this theory, but let's first stop to look at the bright side for a minute. First, we can credit this theory as the starting point of the study of leadership. Sort of like how people's interest in alchemy laid the foundation for modern-day chemistry, so was this great man theory helpful to spur the interest in the study of leadership. The other positive aspect is that because of the heavy weight placed on heroism, this also meant a heavy focus on positive hero-like character traits and how much positive impact these heroes made on the common person. In a perfect world, where a person would have all the wisdom and understanding they need, with zero, absolutely no character flaws, a great man leadership style would be an excellent choice. But as we've become a bit more civilized and we've figured out how this isn't a perfect world and this type of perfect person doesn't actually exist, the great man theory fell out of favor, and in most of the professional world we've moved along to a more progressive type of leadership. There's quite a few drawbacks to the great man style. First, it's easy to adopt a big I, little u position. It's not empowering or gives others any reason to try, because either you have it or you don't. It requires followers to have a strong faith in the leader, so they're willing to comply, even if it goes against their own well-being. It implies that leadership comes from the top. It's dependent on position and limits the study and expansion of leadership skills in more common settings. It doesn't distinguish very well between power and leadership, and may encourage power hunger, thinking that achieving more power makes for a better leader. It focuses only on the top-level leaders who make it to high levels of fame or power, and ignores leadership at lower levels. In times of extreme adversity that threatens people's survival, the great man leadership might be well received and appreciated. But in the professional healthcare and clinical setting, this leadership style isn't very effective because it doesn't foster collaboration, team relationships, and lessens the value of important everyday actions that aren't considered acts of heroism on their own, but collectively and over time can make a great impact. And research doesn't support effectiveness of this theory. But the final most obvious drawback in this theory leaves out half the potential population, as Great Man Leadership Club doesn't welcome women members. As you could probably guess, the rise to leadership isn't well defined either. Because of the born leader belief, there isn't a well-defined path to becoming a leader. Like alchemy, it's hard to know the secret recipe for leadership. But it seems that a few of the ingredients are to be born a male, live in a climate of adversity with a need for leadership, perform public acts of bravery and heroism, and then be widely recognized for it.
So what is transactional leadership? Transactional leadership focuses on results. It conforms to the existing structure of an organization. It also measures success according to that organization's system of rewards and penalties. The leaders have formal authority and positions of responsibility. This is the traditional manager-subordinate style. These managers are responsible for maintaining routine by managing individual performance and facilitating group performance. There's also a heavy emphasis on avoiding mistakes. The history behind transactional leadership and how it developed? Well, Max Weber described the rational legal leadership, which is also known as transactional, as the exercise of control on the basis of knowledge. This leadership style was widely used after World War II. And then in the 1980s and 90s, Bass, Howell, and Avilo talked about, and they expanded the leadership theory as saying that it was based on contingent reward, setting expectations and rewards for meeting them. It could be passive management, where the manager does not interfere unless an issue arises, or it could be active management, where managers anticipate problems, monitor progress, and issue corrective measures. Some of the characteristics of a transactional leader are that they're focused on short-term goals, they favor structure, policies, and procedures, they thrive on following rules and doing things correctly, they revel in efficiency, they're very left brain. However, some negatives could be that they tend to be inflexible and they're opposed to change. Benefits of using this style of leadership are that it rewards those who are motivated by self-interest to follow instructions. You can achieve short-term goals quickly, and that the rewards and the penalties are clearly defined for the workers. Some drawbacks, however, are that the rewards for the worker are on a practical level only, such as money or perks. Creativity is limited since goals and objectives are already set, and it does not reward personal initiative. Moving from a follower to a leader with this leadership style. As this theory is predicated on punishment and rewards and embodies the roles of manager-subordinate, transitioning from a follower or subordinate to a leader would require the following. Do your job well. Follow your manager's directives. Complete the tasks required in an efficient and effective manner. Be organization and goal-oriented. And be time-oriented. Make sure that you arrive on time to do your job. Only take allotted breaks, be back on time for lunch, and do not leave until said contract time is over.
The transformational leadership theory was first introduced in 1978 by James MacGregor Burns. He was a presidential biographer and author of a book entitled Leadership. Transformational leadership theory focuses on the importance of every employee or follower's contribution within an organization. The transformational leader inspires followers to change their expectations. A strong transformational leader helps develop leadership skills in their followers. The transformational leader inspires motivation and has a clear vision and works toward a common goal. Followers increase their level of performance working under a transformational leader. There is a quote from James MacGregor Burns' leadership book that sums up the transformational leadership theory. It says, transformational leadership occurs when one or more persons engage with others in such a way that leaders and followers raise one another to higher levels of motivation and morality. There are some pros and cons to having a transformational leader in your organization. The pros are that they promote enthusiasm and creativity, they inspire and motivate, they increase employee satisfaction, they promote collaboration between leaders and followers, and they teach followers to be leaders. Now, the cons would be that maybe the leadership style is not for every organization, depending on the goals of the organization. It may rely overly on emotion versus reality. It can place increased pressure on followers to perform at their maximum. And really, you need to have the right leader who has the qualifications of a transformational leader.
Organic leadership. Being active is good. However, facilitating others to be proactive is always better. Organic leadership theory. This theory is codependent on three things: vision, team effort, and followers. The heart of this model is centered around one that is quite familiar to all basketball fans of the Warriors. There's strength in numbers. According to Coops 2012, the organic leadership model is today and tomorrow of leadership. Key characteristics of members operating within the organic model scheme include: leaders are thought to be inspirational. They should possess exceptional communication skills. Also, they should have a shared sense of team involvement. They should be in touch with here and now and not out of sync with reality. And they should delegate well. Followers should be assertive, exceptional listeners, flexible, cooperative, and team-oriented. There are certain strategies that should help propel the follower from always being a follower to becoming a leader. One is that the followers already embody great qualities. However, to becoming a leader within the organic model is solely team determination. Group determines leadership. You have to put the time and work in within this model. And this model operates under the principle of the grassroots mentality, meaning that you start from the bottom and you work your way up. So just because you think you should be a leader or you have certain qualifications, within this group, it's a group decision, and they're looking at your involvement, the time, and the work that you've put in.
Great man leadership doesn't always work well in professional environments that tend to thrive on team efforts and collaboration. It tends to minimize the value of the non-leader's input, and it could look like a my way or the highway, which limits the scope of knowledge and understanding to make good decisions. A while back, I applied for a PRN position with a rehab company just to pick up a few more hours as I was growing my mobile fees business. During the interview, I talked a lot about my goals with my mobile fees business. But this rehab company also provided fees in-house. So we decided that I wouldn't attempt to market or provide fee services to this facility. And the interviewer and I seemed to be in full agreement and on the same page. A couple weeks after they hired me, though, and all was going smoothly, and I hadn't said or done anything about, regarding fees at all, and out of the blue, the president of the company sent a non-compete letter to my facility manager and asked me to sign it. Unfortunately, it was worded really vaguely and it was poorly written, and technically it would require that I not pursue, even talk about my mobile fees business in any fashion, anywhere, at any time, even outside of the dealings with the company. And I explained that I understood the spirit of this letter and that I didn't have any problems with it, but I had concerns with the vague wording and technically how it was written. So I asked that the president revise it. I expressed my concerns, and I also recommended that maybe she have her legal department review it. And when I mentioned this, I got the feeling that she was very annoyed. And she did revise it, sent it right back to me, but I don't think she sought any counsel or collaborated with anybody, because when it came back to me, only a few words were changed, and it actually made the letter worse. So I politely sent my letter of resignation and just chose to focus my time and energy on my own fledgling mobile fees business. The interesting thing is that with this type of leadership mentality, this president might have thought very well of herself after this incident, maybe even making claims that she snuffed out an invader that was threatening the company. But the reality was that she lost a good employee, and that was actually in full agreement with her request. If she would have used a more inclusive, team-centered leadership style, she could have gotten trusted feedback on her non-compete document and figured out the disagreement was only in the wording, not in the meaning of the document, and probably would have kept a valuable employee from quitting.
So some real-life transactional leadership examples. Start with the negative one. I have a former principal that dictated to the staff that we should walk our middle school students to each class during the school day. We as a staff tried to explain to him that our kids don't take too kindly to being treated like elementary school students, and they don't want to be walked to their classes. He unfortunately would not listen to our counsel, and so the result was that the students rebelled and the morale among the staff was declined. A positive example of transactional leadership was back when I was in graduate school, that I followed the SLP intern supervisor's directives as a grad intern in both hospital and the school settings. So what was the result? I passed my internship and I graduated with my master's degree.
An example of how leadership impacted my work environment was when I was an inpatient rehab manager and we got a new hospital CEO. He began an initiative where all managers had to meet monthly, one-to-one, with all of the staff to check in and see how things were going on the front lines. The staff felt that their voices were heard and that senior leadership was listening to their individual concerns. The information from the meetings went up the chain to the directors of the departments and shared with senior leadership. This really boosted morale and made everyone feel like their contribution to the organization was important. Another example of how leadership impacted my work was when we instituted a clinical ladder and staff had the opportunity to get a pay raise for going above and beyond their job descriptions. For example, obtaining a specialty certification in your field of interest. An unsuccessful example of how leadership impacted my work environment was when we had an acute rehab department in our hospital where occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, and recreational therapy all work together to get our patients ready to go back home. Senior leadership decided to close the clinic at the end of a month. The managers knew this was coming, but didn't tell the staff until we were all called in to a meeting by the CEO and our rehab director. They told us that all the therapists would keep their jobs, but would have to transfer over to acute care. The recreational therapist and the case manager were not that lucky and lost their jobs. We were a work family, and in one meeting, our whole department was eliminated. That was a challenging time where there was little trust that senior leadership had the staff's best interest at heart.
And lastly, an example of organic influence would take me back to a friend of mine who was a director of nursing in a long-term care facility. As a friend, I would always listen to her discuss how the building and the facility would greatly benefit from new leadership and one who possessed different values. Here's just a short story of something that took place when a new leader did start at the facility. The organic leadership approach was implemented by my friend's new administrator. The new administrator called a meeting and showed a video displaying the effectiveness of how facility staff members and departments create better outcomes and work environments when they communicate, prioritize patient care, and initiate a tad bit of teamwork and effort. He went on to pledge to lead by example. He implemented department staff target boards that were addressed in weekly meetings. My friend said the entire staff became more willing to help each other as they witnessed how team effort was effective. She went on to add how the work atmosphere changed for the better. She also stated that the open line of communication and the willingness of the leader to get his hands dirty was impressive and something she had not witnessed in almost over 10 years as a nurse.
Leadership is a choice. It is not a rank. I know many people at the senior-most levels of organizations who are absolutely not leaders. They are authorities, and we do what they say because they have authority over us, but we would not follow them. And I know many people who are at the bottoms of organizations who have no authority, and they are absolutely leaders. And this is because they have chosen to look after the person to the left of them, and they have chosen to look after the person to the right of them. This is what a leader is.
the words of Hillary Rodham Clinton, to sum up the organic leadership model, it takes a village.